Hello, I'm Peter Towers, Managing Director of ESS BIZTOOLS and Towers Business Development. So welcome today to this webinar, which we're presenting on identifying grants for businesses. I hope that you're okay, especially if you're in one of the areas suffering the lockdowns, and that you're able to continue to operate your businesses. And hopefully this discussion today on grants will give you some ideas for what you might be able to do within your business. Grants can assist businesses to grow. There are literally hundreds of government grants in Australia from the Australian, state and territory governments, and they cover a wide range of activities. Grants are available for various entities, sole traders, partnerships, trusts, and companies, but undoubtedly companies are the most popular type of entity for a government grant. The bureaucrats obviously believe that the only way people can operate a business is through a company. And obviously that's the entity you need to be in if you're going to try to raise capital utilising the Corporations Act or crowdsource funding or early stage innovation company. Most grants require the applicant to match the government contribution. So some people think that there's 100% grants. They're very hard to find. I don't really know of any when it comes to government grants. They're all looking for around a 50% contribution by the applicant. And formal applications are required. You just don't get on the telephone and ask for a grant. You need to go through the formal application process. And the government departments seem to be on a tack whereby they're asking for more and more information about a particular applicant. So you have to realise that if you're going to apply for a government grant as a company or a partnership or a trust or a sole trader, you're going to have to disclose a fair bit of information. Submit your financial accounts in many cases, submit business plans, especially if the grant's worth a bit of money. And the process can be rather long, especially if you're applying for the Accelerating Commercialisation Grant, which is a $1 million maximum grant on a 50-50 basis. So that's proposing that there could be $2 million worth of work, and the government needs a fair bit of information to decide whether they're going to proceed and give a business that grant. So let me go through a few of these key grants so that you, if you're a company director or a leadership team member or the owner of a business or a partner in a business, get some idea of how these key grants fit together. And the first one that I want to talk to you today about is research and development. Now in this grant, the applicant must be a company, cannot be anything else. And there is a documented process. In our other business, ESS BIZTOOLS, we have developed a full process of step-by-step dialogue, including flowcharts to explain how research and development operates. We haven't got time for that today, but if anyone's interested in understanding more about research and development, you can send me an email, please, peter@essbiztools.com.au. There's different treatments for companies with turnovers under $20 million to companies with turnovers over $20 million. So let's just have a look at them. And there's also some changes that have occurred for this new financial year that we're now in. So in 2021, the research and development tax incentive rebate for a company with a turnover less than $20 million is 43.5% of the eligible research and development expenditure. So a company has to go through the process. It has to document what it's doing. It has to identify the knowledge that it's trying to find, has to identify hypothesis or hypotheses, and then it has to conduct experiments. That's really what it's all about. And it's that expenditure, which a fair bit of it will be labor or external contractors that are brought in by the business to undertake this work. So when you add all that up, 43.5% of it is able to be claimed as the research and development tax rebate. In 21-22, the government is changing this system so that the companies with under $20 million in turnover will get 18.5% above the tax rate. So the tax rate in 21-22 for companies with turnovers under $20 million is to be 25%. So the rate comes back to exactly the same figure as what it is at present, 43.5%. But that's the basis of how it is calculated, the tax rate plus 18.5%, which is obviously been calculated to give the 43.5. The big opportunity that companies with turnovers under $20 million have got is that if the company is trading at a loss, the directors can elect in the company's tax return to receive a cash refund of the amount of the rebate, so long as the losses exceed the calculated amount of the research and development incentive rebate. So if the tax losses in the company are $500,000, the rebate at 43.5% is calculated at $350,000. The tax office will pay $350,000 to the company's bank account within 30 days, normally, of the company's tax return being lodged, subject, of course, to your accountant having ticked the box that the directors would like to receive that refund. That refund is paid direct into a nominated bank account, and the company can then utilise those funds. In most cases, they're then utilised in further research and development activities. So that's great for small companies who are undertaking research and development. Now let's look at the situation if your company's got a turnover of over $20 million per annum. In 2021, the company received a research and development incentive rebate of 38%. So it was 43.5% if you were below $20 million in turnover. If you're over $20 million, you got 38% of the eligible research and development expenditure. And there was no special consideration if the company was trading at a loss. So if you had a loss and your turnover was over $20 million, obviously it remained a loss, but you got no opportunity to apply for the cash refund equivalent to that research and development rebate amount. Now the government has now changed the rules from 21-22. And we've got this concept now that if the research and development expenditure, this is the research and development expenditure that the company is going to be able to claim in their tax return as a research and development incentive rebate, is from 0 to 2% of the company's expenditure in the 12-month period, the company will get a research and development premium of 8.5%, which is added to the company tax rate. So if the company tax rate for companies over $20 million is 30%, that means the company is able to claim a tax rebate of 38.5%, which is exactly what it was able to claim, or nearly exactly the same as what it was able to claim in 2021. Now, if the percentage of research and development to total expenditure is over 2%, when an analysis is made of the company's profit and loss account, the premium for research and development is 16.5%, which is added to the company's tax rate. And that is, if the company tax rate was 30%, that would mean that the research and development incentive rebate for companies over $20 million in turnover would be 46.5%. So that's the way the research and development system operates. Accelerating Commercialization Grant is another very important grant that's available, and I mentioned it a bit earlier. Again, only companies can receive this grant, but anyone can apply for it. So you can go through the application process, which does take a couple of months. And you are admitted to do that sort of negotiation on the understanding that if you are going to be offered a grant, you will then incorporate a company, because the government will only deal with companies for most things, and in particular this grant. The maximum grant is $1 million on a 50-50 basis. So that means the total amount of work could be $2 million. It's a lot of work. So what else applies? The turnover must be under $20 million for the last 3 years. So if it's gone over $20 million in any one of those years, you can't apply. And the company must have developed a novel product, process, or service. So it's all part of research and development. This is really a special grant that follows the research and development process. The government takes the view that through the research and development incentive rebate that we just looked at, you've received assistance to do your research and development activities. And now the company is faced with what can be a very high cost, and that is to move from a prototype through to your first commercial sale. And first commercial sale is at full commercial rates with the markups that you envisage you're going to be able to get for your products. And that is normally a calculation that's been supported by a marketing consultant who's prepared a marketing report for the company. So we're looking at the commercialization activities, and they can be very expensive. It can include some of your own labor in your organization, in your company. It can include directors' labor, but there is an upper limit calculation on a salary of $150,000 per annum. But there's a whole range of expenditure items when you look at something moving from a prototype through to a final product that's then able to be sold and supported. Staff training is able to be undertaken to get the product into the marketplace for first commercial sales at commercial rates. So this grant can run for 2 years, and the company would receive periodic advances. So the preferred applicants are from the growth sectors, which have been nominated by the Australian government a few years ago. Advanced manufacturing, food and agribusiness, medical technologies and pharmaceuticals, mining equipment technology and services. So they're the, together with oil, gas and energy resources, they're the growth sectors, 5 of them. So it's businesses within those categories. There's hundreds of them when you sit down and analyze it. But also there's others, because in addition, there's industries that are defined as enabling technologies and sectors. Now these support the growth sectors, these ones here, the advanced manufacturing, food and agribusiness, etc. So they support them by supplying technology, inputs or services to drive business growth. And these businesses can be from freight and logistics, infrastructure related construction and services, information and communications technology, digital technologies, and professional services, mainly to do with weather forecasting, and a couple of other areas, not accounting or legal or those types of professions. So that's the eligibility. Other businesses can apply, but you need to realise that there is a weighting towards these nominated industries. So you need to make sure you've got a fantastic application, a great product, and a great vision of how you are going to commercialise it and make it a great product in the marketplace. The next grant I want to refer to is the Business Growth Grant. Now, this is a grant of up to $20,000 on a 50-50 basis. It's available for growth sector industries. So it's those same industries we just looked at. That's what's targeted. It's a great area for tradie businesses. I've done a fair bit of work with tradie businesses that fall under those definitions because they're involved in the mining industry or the oil industry or involved in other work. It will help these companies build capacity, improve their capacity, and extend their networks. Basically includes everything they can do, which might add value to their businesses, so that they are able to take advantage of growth opportunities. So it's a great area. And if you've got a business that's operating in those areas that you think could be eligible, please contact me. And obviously, if you want to have a discussion with me about an accelerating commercialization grant application for your company, please feel free to contact me, 1-800-232-088. The Export Market Development Grant, there's about 4,000 businesses apply for this each year. Now, any type of entity can apply. Now, it's not like the previous accelerating commercialization, which was only a company. So any type of entity can apply. But again, there's been some changes in the law to do with Export Market Development Grant. In 2021, the turnover had to be under $50 million for an applicant. And the businesses could claim up to a maximum of $150,000 on a 50-50 basis, although there are sub-limits for various categories. And there are 13 categories of claims. So you can claim for overseas market research trips. You can claim for going to overseas conferences and seminars to promote your products. You can claim for overseas representation and other matters. So there's a range of expenses you can claim under 2021. And those applications have to be lodged by the 30th of November, 2021. So those applications are now out and you need to get them lodged if you have undertaken expenditure that relates to helping you export products or services outside of Australia. If you want to talk to me about that, please contact me. But then we've had a change from 21-22. So this is now operational from 1 July 2021. There's a new system in place. So let's just go through that. It's now becoming an eligibility-based grant program. So the previous program, which went through to June 21, you went out and spent the money, did your promotion, and then you applied to Austrade for a reimbursement of some of that money that you'd spent on export marketing activities. The government has now changed it all around, following research with industry and obviously Austrade officers both here and overseas. And they've now decided it should be an eligibility-based grant program. So you apply in advance. You tell Austrade what you are going to do. So you apply before you spend the money, whereas previously it's been the other way around. You go out and spend the money, then lodge an application and hope that you're going to get some payment back. So an application has to be assessed and approved by Austrade, and they will then enter into a grant agreement with you. Very similar to what happens with Oz Industry. On any of their grants, you always get a grant agreement. The same thing is now going to apply for these grants, which the administration body is Austrade. These milestone payments will be made, and it operates from the 1st of July 2021. So the grant applications open on the 16th of August, a few days' time, and close on the 30th of November. So you've got 3.5 months to put your application together and submit it. And then Austrade will assess it and award the grants and sign the agreements. As I understand it, none of that will happen until after the 30th of November. So the applications open in a few days' time, and you can then lodge your information, which basically will require you to specify what you want to do, and they will then indicate to you whether they're going to give you that funding, and then they will progressively pay it. So there's 3 tiers being introduced. So in tier 1, that's someone who's ready to export. They're a first-time exporter. So you can apply for over a 2-year period for a maximum of $40,000 in each year to undertake what you want to. And you must match this as well. So in other words, you're planning on doing export promotional activities on me of $80,000 a year if you're going to be able to claim the $40,000. And you will have to be able to specify exactly what your exports are, where they're going, what export market development activities you're going to participate in or undertake. So you would specify how many overseas trips you have to make and where they're going to, and they will then be able to calculate what the airfares are and the living expenses are when you're in those overseas countries. Tier 2 is expanding. You've been operating for 2 years doing exports. You're going to expand your export market promotional activities. The maximum that this Tier 2 grant will apply for is 3 years, and it's a maximum of $80,000 per financial year. Obviously, $160,000 expenditure in each of those years because you're going to fund 50% yourself. And then Tier 3 is you're expanding and you're on a strategic shift. You're expanding your export promotional activities and making a shift, for example, targeting a new market or a new type of customer. The maximum is for 3 years support from Austrade, and the maximum amount that they will pay is $150,000 per annum. Again, meaning that the total expenditure for the year would be at least $300,000. If Austrade's approved it, they would pay your business $150,000. So in the brochure that's on the internet, Austrade is saying they will potentially give support for up to 8 years with a potential payment of $770,000 to the applicant. If you calculate those various figures I just went through, that's what you'll come to. So that's the Export Market Development Grant. We are currently updating our article, which we write on every grant and make available within our grant products, which we promote to accountants and businesses. So if you're interested, please contact me and we can have a discussion. There's other grants, of course, and I've just summarized some of these. I think it's important that directors and leadership team members, owners, partners in businesses, familiarize yourselves with the grants that might apply to your business so you become aware of them, so you make sure applications are lodged. There's apprenticeship grants and there's a range of employment grants, especially employing people who have been unemployed for some time. There's always big disaster grants targeted at SMEs and primary producers. And that's because of bushfires, floods, cyclones. There's a wide range of COVID-19 support payments being offered by the federal government and the state and territory governments. Over the last couple of years, we've seen grants come from the federal government as assistance to SMEs who want to bid for work in the defence industry. Some of those grants are up to $250,000. So they're well worth looking at if you are a business that's wanting to bid for work from Navy, RAF or Army. There's special grants there because the defence industry want to make sure that companies have gone through a briefing process to understand the peculiarities of dealing with defence, so that the business, whether it's a tradie business or a professional service firm, can fit into the culture and understand what's going on around them if they're working within the defence industry. The Australian Bureau of Statistics has got a range of information available on their website. Basically, it's all free. Some years ago, it was something that used to cost about $8,000 for a business to get their hands on, but it is free and available to anyone to download. So if you're curious, I'd suggest you have a look at it and see what you could do. There's a lot of support for the film industry, through Screen Australia support grant programs. There's quite a number of those, and they are all in operation at present. So that's an overview of grants that I thought you might be interested in as company directors, leadership team members, owners, partners in businesses. I've had a lot of experience in government grants. I was a business advisor to a very popular grant called COMET, Commercialising Emerging Technology, which has now been superseded by Accelerating Commercialisation. I did that for 11 years on a contract basis through my consulting business, Towers Business Development. And I learned a lot about how governments react and how Oz industry works. So if you want to talk to me about government grants, I'm quite happy to talk to you, and we can enter into an arrangement if you wish to work with me. Because obviously I work with clients in these matters who are situated all over Australia. We've got this wonderful device called Zoom these days, whereby it's very easy to communicate and we can have meetings. So please contact me. If you're interested, we have some upcoming webinars. We've committed to running a webinar each week targeted at SME businesses through Towers Business Development. We have business review meetings next week. These are the meetings that I think you should be making sure that your organization has every month, or at the most every 3 months, irrespective of your size. Give yourself a chance to, first of all, add value and survive, and then grow. And the best way of doing that is sitting down with your leadership team, including your accountant, and perhaps your marketing advisor and lawyer in some respects, to analyze where your business is going. So we're going to look at that in some detail. Business review meetings, Wednesday, the 18th of August at 12 noon, AEST. Planning funding for your business. How are you going? Are you able to borrow money from banks or other financial institutions? That normally means that you have got spare assets, or one of your directors or shareholders has some spare assets that you can offer to a bank as security. But then you need to understand that the directors at least will be asked to sign personal guarantees by most banks, and there's monthly repayments of principal and interest to be paid. Or you can look at what has become the modern phenomenon. For 4 years, we've now had the opportunity of a private company or an unlisted public company being able to raise capital direct from the public. It's called crowdsourced funding equity raising. You can raise up to $5 million in a 12-month period. Then you can go back to the market the following year and try and raise more money, up to another $5 million if you wish, obviously, and as long as the marketplace supports you. And we have early stage innovation companies. which are for young companies who have developed new products, processes, or services. They're normally very small. There's an expenditure limit and there's an income limit, and they have to pass some tests. But if they do, there is real advantages for investors. And for that reason, they're becoming a very popular type of company. Obviously, they need to have a good story to tell. They need to have a great product. But they've been set up in this way deliberately by the government to try to help those type of companies attract investors. And last but not least, in this area, we've got Section 708 of the Corporations Act. It's been with us for 35 years. And it helps a private company raise capital, but it's not as expansive as what crowdsourced funding is, but it's still there. And if you're dealing with friends and colleagues, therefore there's no need to market or promote that you're trying to raise capital. It's still a great area to very quickly, you could do it between now and the weekend and raise up to $2 million in a 12-month period from a maximum of 20 investors. So we're going to talk about all those opportunities, planning funding for your business on Thursday, the 26th of August at 12 noon AEST. And I hope that you can join us. Now, if you want to register for any of those webinars, please go to our website, www.towersbusiness.com.au, and click on to webinars. So thank you very much for being with us today. I've got no questions, but if you think of a question later on that you'd like to ask me about any matter that we've discussed today on grants, but if you like any other matter to do with capital raising, chief financial officer services, better running your business, you can go to our website, www.towersbusiness.com.au, or you can send me an email, peter@towersbusiness.com.au, or telephone me on 1-800-232-088. Once again, if you're in one of the areas around Australia that's subject to lockdown at present, we are thinking of you. Please be safe, and we hope and pray that you'll be out of these difficulties in the not too distant future. To the rest of you, stay safe, and I look forward to talking to you again next week when we can discuss the matters relative to business review meetings, and then the following week, planning funding for your business, which ends this weekly program for Towers Business Development. Thank you and have a great day. Goodbye. And I hope everything does go well for you. Goodbye.